World Health Organization today declared the coronavirus a global pandemic.
The numbers right now are stacked up.
The world surpassing 1 million deaths from the coronavirus.
Aerial view of the COVID floor. Proning is praised as one sure way to distract death, to avert its gaze. The noun of the month, the verb purring in my mouth. Through the inside window of the makeshift hospital, I looked at the oversized chessboard with cots in tight squares. As motionless pawns, their spines up, waiting for the portioned air to fill their chests. My name is Leea Glasheen, and I am from Wisconsin in the United States of America. Particularly, I live a little bit north of Chicago in a city called Milwaukee. And I'm a writer and now a publisher, and I'm also a teacher. When I heard about this other virus and the symptoms that people were having and that they weren't able to breathe and they were being intubated, I was horrified because I know that I'm susceptible and I know what it feels like not to be able to breathe and to worry for your own life. And for that reason, I was immediately particularly cautious. Everything in here is one-time use, patients included. Their time is wearing down. Gowns with openings in the back run out too. One-size collars tight like the noose. Running tally of lives prolonged rarely makes the news. We'd rather ponder on losses. Values are also on life support. Intubated and properly proned, brusque and tway, death approaches them from the back, enters without foreplay. I had people make fun of me, actually laugh in my face and make jokes and about, oh yeah, you need to go hide in your house, live in fear. Well, I consider myself a relatively adventurous person, but I was not ready to go out and dance with the virus.
Due to the risk of the coronavirus, we kindly ask you to keep a distance from other people and
it kind of revealed how thin the line between everyday life and disaster actually is, which I think particularly in the Western world, where I think we feel safe a lot of the time in terms of this big cataclysmic sort of events happening, you kind of realize actually that's not true. Nature can really come in with something and throw everything into disarray.
This is written by a 10-year-old in Endicott, New York. Her name is Madeleine Hausel, and her poem is called Feelings. Fear grips my heart, fear of a hospital cart, carrying my loved ones away these sad, worry-filled days. Stay home, stay away. If you don't, you'll pay. The virus whispers every day with this ocean of worry and the waves of fear. I see my face covered with many, many tears. Here I am stuck. Only fear and worry, just my luck. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm worried. People are having very different experiences depending upon the resources, their personal resources, the resources available in their country, and how their governments are handling the situation. But with the virus, many of us are experiencing fear. Many of us are still experiencing fear. Am I going to be able to keep working? And this is true in many, many economies, but particularly in economies where people's jobs are not necessarily even recognized by the government. If they are selling something in a marketplace and suddenly the markets are shut down, their income is gone. There's no even record of their income.
My name is Bobby La Joya Sambodibedesen. I am from Congo, but I grew up in France. I lived in Senegal for 18 years. I am, from what I have been told, an artist. There is not enough information about the origin of the virus, how you can get it, and how you don't have it. A curfew had been put in place, as if the virus was an octambule that only moved at night. While the day, local markets were open and everyone was walking, moving, touching without mask. Le sourire est un bien beau masque, mais le rire est parfois bien dur à porter lorsque les larmes menacent de couler. Pour que nos rires perdurent malgré la dureté de ces temps, portons le masque qui empêchera nos larmes de couler amèrement. What I missed was to see the smile of the people around me, the smile of the people I love. A smile was the most beautiful thing one could give because it's a caress of the heart. The smile is a very beautiful mask, but laughter is sometimes very hard to bear when the tears threaten to fall. For our laughter will last despite the harshness of these times. Let us wear the mask that keep our tears from falling bitterly. At the start of the lockdown, I regularly watched the news, and it was the urge of source of struggle, pain, stress. So I decided to stop watching news and social media.
I believe that poetry is a different way to look at things than what we were hearing in news reports and in social media. It is strange, it is counterintuitive that reading poetry that can talk about negative things and negative emotions and tragedies and horrors, how can that have a positive effect on us when the media has such a negative effect when we read those things? But somehow, because it is a more personal level and because you're reading about an individual's experience, and it's not just that you're reading about that experience, but in poetry, that person has chosen to tell you his or her story.
And I think in a world that feels out of control and where you have a lack of ability to have sort of be empowered by your own world, I think it's a moment to stop and listen to other people and maybe hear something that's useful for you.
It is kind of therapy, isn't it? It's if you can process what you're going through, if you can write that down, that is a very therapeutic thing to be able to do.
We learned to live quite differently. We learned how to slow down our pace. We stopped to admire the view, the beauty surrounding our space. We noticed our neighbours anew when sat in their garden or step. We nodded a how do you do. Some knew that we'd never yet met.
My name is Catherine West-McGrath. I live in Lancashire, and I currently work as an administrator in an arts organisation. A lot of my poems, they are like diary entries, and they make sense on the day, and maybe they can only be written on a particular day or in a particular week. We did feel that, yes, we've been asked to stay at home, but we did feel some comfort in the fact that there was a lot of financial support right at the very beginning so that people could stay at home. And so that was a little bit of a luxury at the time because we didn't know how long this would last. And even if it did only last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it was, well, let's make the most of it in the time that we've got, because we don't know when we might be called to go back to work and everything might start being fast again.
We took care to structure our day, made ceremonies last longer too, like using a pot for our tea or letting the coffee beans brew. We shared recipes with our friends and learned how to bake bread and cake. We learned we had talents and skills and felt good for what we could make. We mended and sewed broken clothes. We found at last things to repair. We started to grow things from seed and tended those seedlings with care.
It's a time to listen to ourselves and our needs, to listen more to our family, our spouses, our children, our parents, our siblings, or anyone who's our housemate. And it's a time to listen and notice all the different parts of our home that we may have neglected. And I'm not saying it just in its literal sense, but figuratively, we need to come home. Because I think we're all used to this lifestyle of hustling and being busy that we rarely pause and be mindful of all the little things.
When somebody gets sick, for example, somebody having a heart attack, you don't go back to your old way of life. You think, why did I have a heart attack? And you don't get angry and say, I just want to get back to normal and start running around 100 miles an hour and maybe hurting my body. It's time to understand why I got into this situation. And I think maybe the COVID situation is that wake-up call.
I was really busy before lockdown. I was doing a talk for my book. I was in my car 20, 25 hours a week around the UK doing work, which was amazing, but I was tired. And it kind of forced me to stay inside for a bit and go, well, what do I do with this extra time? And after I accepted that I'd lost all of my work for the next few months, was to sort of go, well, I can't control that. And, you know, one good mindfulness thing I've learned over the years is not to worry too much about the stuff you can't control. I'm Dan Simpson. I am a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a performer, I'm an educator and a producer, and I'm based in London.
My house is filled with manic belly fear disaster prepping, or curious complacent denial. I have destroyed my body clock, stole a frustrated hour, discombobulated, despondent, hoping for this to end. Swerving too far to the extremes, we, the confused, connected, need to stay apart to stick together. Stop. We're staying at home. Steering a mindful middle course, I am no longer a slave to Titus Shoelace's time, who just makes money. Universal basic income working in a onesie, I unravel fond, menial, reliable activities. A resolved economic unit put on hold, blankness. I am more free. Checking in with my mum, glad that I am well to effectively care for my family, itching to run when I'm stressed. I wish I had a treadmill to relax.
Not to lose hope and to continue to do the things that make you feel as good as you can feel, even in these difficult situations. That's always a challenge. Not sort of going down the path of sort of dulling your senses to whatever's going on, which definitely happened for me. You know, there were nights I drank too much, and there were probably weeks I drank too much, and that's understandable as well. But sort of forgiving yourself that stuff is really important too.
One house. Two up, two down, locked down, locked in, madhouse, there's no way out. Our kids, they scream, it's like a bad dream when they shout. The garden now is out of bounds. My neighbour thinks we're mental, sends us texts that fundamentally state, I said I am that I can't sit in silence in my garden since lockdown came in. Therein he says the problem lies. Your screaming children's constant noise, do you not care or are you dumb or selfish? Because he's so selfless.
My name is Stephen Gill. I live in Greater London. Well, it's technically Essex, but I'm from Birmingham originally, and I'm a teacher. I was constantly having to work. We were just constantly being hit with deadlines for things and to be planning new content and to be logging on and teaching the kids live, you know, while you're trying to manage your own kids. There was multiple challenges, I guess. There was that, trying to spin the plates of work and to keep my kids educated and well behaved, because they were just stuck in, you know, we live in quite a small house. And then a couple of days a week, my partner would be in school because she was there for the vulnerable group. So I'd have the kids by myself for a couple of days, and just trying to keep all that going was just, it was hell. Oh my God, it was so difficult. My mental health was shot.
My 3-year-old must be sleeping. As I see the missus creeping across the landing, she glances, understanding, also been battling, routine so demanding. Eventually we'll get to see each other for a cup of tea. Oh, you're right. Oh shit, is that the time? Time to reboot the work PC. I might get this done by 10:30, but it ends up pushing 12:30. And as I see the symmetry of she and I and her and me, two climbers on the verge of falling off the edge, I then recall that message from my next-door neighbour about our parenting behaviour of my children. It's ridiculous. The noise has really got to us. It's got to you. I wish I could fix this. I wish my neighbour understood the cacophony is a symptom of two young kids who need attention. Yes, whilst Mum and Dad both struggle trying to juggle life and work and just do what's best. Our best isn't working. I want to ask him, does this sound like a happy family?
And so it's just made me, maybe be more mindful of actually putting a lot more time into my kids. Like if we go into some other lockdown now, my kids just can't lose out because they lost out. They lost out in a lot of ways, I think. But, you know, my missus said something quite profound. She said, we didn't give up. You know, a lot of other parents we know just didn't bother battling their kids and just gave up on the reading, gave up on the maths, but we didn't. We stuck with it, and it was horrible because it was just a battle. It was just, my daughter's really difficult. She's really intelligent. She's a really high functioning kid and extremely articulate for her age, my 5-year-old. But she's reluctant to do stuff, and but we just didn't let her get off with that.
Especially for mothers of small children, being constantly surrounded by noise and little children fighting can be really overwhelming. I'm Azalia Suhaimi. I'm from Malaysia. I currently live in a quiet neighborhood somewhere in the state of Selangor of Malaysia. I am a content creator, a poet, and a storyteller. I am also currently studying part-time. I'm studying English literature at the University of Cambridge, and the course is being conducted remotely due to the current situation of the coronavirus. So I'm still here in Malaysia attending lectures and tutorials online. I realized just how much more I could do as a mother. I realized the strength in me to be able to be challenged and bombarded by so many things. And although I was overwhelmed, I would find ways to practice some self-care and then wake up the next day with a new energy, even if it was just a little bit. And that was a strength in itself, the way I wanted to wake up the next day with renewed energy. That no matter how challenging it was, I still wanted to try. It is past midnight, and I'm standing here by my window with the largest net on one hand, trying to catch all these thoughts that have been clouding my mind these days. There is so much uncertainty in the world today, and there is a lump in my throat as I think of how much longer we possibly have to wait until we get to meet our parents again. And my cell phone is in my other hand, waiting to make phone calls to everyone I've missed, until I remember that I am an introvert. And while I'm comfortable in my quarantine cocoon, I am still scared. In my poem, I talk about finding the strength to finally pick up the phone call. This was a metaphor for all of us in the way we find our own strengths at a time we think we don't have much of it. Because for introverts, phone calls are a scary thing. And during the lockdown, we had no choice but to make phone calls to the people we miss. And being able to do that, to overcome our fear of talking on the phone, is something big for introverts. So maybe it is a time to finally see the stars as the world darkens. And maybe it is a time to listen as the world slows down. And maybe it is a time to realize all the strength we truly have inside as we walk through this darkness. Maybe my strength is to finally make this phone call behind my introverted fears.
If you're struggling or if you're in a really, really rough situation, if you can write a poem about it, and if the piece of work that you create can touch other people and mean something for other people, then it's a way of creating a positive out of a negative situation. So I always think that a bad situation always feels a little bit brighter if you can create a good piece of art out of it. My name is Jessica Cook, and at the moment I'm working as a teaching assistant, but I write a lot of poetry in my spare time. I love the leaves that crowd my yard, like concert people, their flushed faces and slow, skillful sway. The wind grabs handfuls, throws them down again, pulls them from their trees. No matter where they land, they glow like fire. Liverpool hibernates now, gyms and bars like closed eyes, whilst Boris bumbles like a bad magician, sawing the country in half. I would say that poetry can create a counter-narrative. to all the things in the media that are going on about the pandemic. I think that poetry expresses how the people feel, and I think that if you like look at Instagram, or you look at like contemporary poetry, or you look at spoken word poetry today, it normally has a strong sense of how the day-to-day people are feeling, because I feel like politicians, although a lot of the time they may mean well, I feel like they are out of touch with day-to-day people. Rules fly from his hands instead of doves. Still, we smile beneath our masks. Eyes crinkle like autumn leaves. Abracadabra, we're still here with magic up our sleeves.
There are so many ways that we can dress ourselves up and hide ourselves and filter ourselves, that it's just a beautiful experience to be so raw as poetry is, and where people are working to really express every detail of their feelings and emotions.
Whereas normal conversations, we sometimes don't listen in the way that we should do, but when we're really listening to somebody's poem, you can really just stop and think, well, I don't have to answer any questions. I don't have to ask any questions. I can just actually sit and be present and listen to it. And I think that's really great about poetry. You just totally focus on the other person's perspective.
Basically, we are all the same race, the human race, and we are all linked to each other like links in a chain. And the COVID virus has reminded us of this lost truth.
We're all experiencing this in a different way, and I think all you can do is just say, well, this is my experience and it's as valid as your experience is.
Alone in our thoughts, together voicing them. Alone in isolation, together in a pandemic. Alone until it ends, together in hope and love.